But everyone, welcome to Construction Technology Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Andrew from Join and Mike from World Vision. Gentlemen, how are you? Happy almost 4th of July. What's going on?
Be almost 4th of July.
So we are going to give Fable a spin now that it's back in everyone's pocket. We thought it'd be cool to benchmark Fable against some projects that have already been estimated and answer or continue to answer the question of whether these models out of the box can be fairly proficient at quantity takeoffs and whether they can do scoping. So for the agenda today, both Mike and I have processed a project where we have a ground truth. We're going to pull it up on screen and we're going to walk through the results. And so I think Mike has a project. I have a project ready to go. And then Andrew, I suppose, is going to ask questions about the process. So let's get started. So I'm happy to go first. Let me share my screen and let's get going. So the TLDR with this analysis with Fable. Let me just speed up for the team. So I uploaded a project, fairly complicated manufacturing plant retrofit. This project was, I think, around 300 million capex, and Fable actually did a good job. It did a good job on scope. It did a poor job on quantities, and I'm gonna increase the size here, and we'll be able to see what they did here. So let me just decrease this so we can kind of review this. Okay, great. So this is the, like I said, industrial manufacturing plant. So the headline is on scope versus ground truth. We have an F1, which is like a data science term, which balances positives and negatives, false and true positives, and false and true negatives against the ground truth. And it scored almost 90.90 on the scope identification, but a materially poor quantity takeoff F1. And I want to walk through these obviously and go through some of the specifics. But I will say, out of the box, Fable is good at scoping. The cross document scope analysis is strong, and it's only getting better. When we reviewed 4.7 against the same project, it was scoring 0.69. So I think in general, scoping is just going to get easier with these models. Mike, I don't know if you saw anything similar.
Yeah, and I think, like, the zoom out of this is, construction documents already are not 100% accurate. There's always gonna be scope gaps, and obviously there's an entire industry around doing scope gap analysis. There's an entire industry around doing document analysis. There's an entire industry around doing takeoff analysis. I don't even think being 100% is the end goal. I think it's all about, like, helping with the efficiency of, like, getting you to review as an estimator, as a pre-con manager, the pieces that need your review. Because in construction, there's not a right answer. This isn't like, hey, I'm going to buy, like, e-commerce widgets, and I need to buy a widget. I know exactly the dimensions, the output that I need. Like, there's this flux in construction, and that's why general contractors are where they are. So I think the point in my position around this is, like, it's never going to be 100%, but doesn't need to be 100%. We rely too much on construction documents already. Does these tools actually push you more upstream to actually be a part of the design process more effectively, to have these conversations earlier? I think Fable does a very, very good job of getting you to that earlier conversation with the engineer and architecture firm.
Mm. I I'll disagree. I do think when you say we're overly reliant on drawings, I mean, like, that's just the process, right? Like
Doesn't
people
need to be
have.
the process though, because if you look at, like, the EU, that's not the process.
Well, what's the process?
There's a quantity takeoff, on a document set in the EU, they would have the quantities. Like, why I'm like befuddled that, like, an engineer or an architect puts, 17 doors on floor 1 of a building, compresses it into a 2D position, and then makes it very, very hard for someone to count those doors, when in reality, that's not the first principle problem. The owner should be pushing off against the architect and engineer saying, hey, instead of paying, $10,000 for a takeoff or a scope gap analysis, like, this should be almost like an open source data structure that you can read and engage with however you want. And
Hmm.
then by forcing it off of documents into an actual computer read language, Fable, OpenAI is going to be able to read those a lot more effectively, because it doesn't need to be a human reading those endpoints. Like, why, like, this is why, like, I'd be bullish on Autodesk. Like, if Autodesk can open up those nodes and you can engage on the front end with a chat interface. It solves a lot of these problems that don't necessarily need to be solved the way they're being solved now, and that's why reading documents isn't the solution.
I also wish that were true. I mean, selfishly, I'm happy it's not true because then it allows me to build a business. So it is somewhat selfish for me to say that. But it would eliminate a lot of waste, and it probably would bring the owner and the GC in alignment more than they are now, or versus it's like it's very adversarial. But irrespective, I mean, like the industry just doesn't work that way here for various reasons, and like there's no owner incentive to share that information because they know it's just going to be used against them. And to your point, the design is just wrong. So the more they share, I think the worse it would be for them when they get caught in like a change order. Now, I was like, I'm curious to get Andrew's perspective on this as somebody who helps
Yeah,
manage VEs.
and all of pre-con? I don't know that if you look at Europe, builders substantially engage earlier. I think on many projects they do, but you have this huge, like the consultant layer in the value stack is thicker in Europe. Like a lot of quantity surveyors work for these, who are the people administering these quantities on the project, right? Like work for consulting firms who are hired by the owner as an owner's rep. They work for Turner and Townsend or Mace or whoever, right? And the builder and the trades get brought in. I think there's more design bid build work there actually for the true prime contractor, and they actually get brought in later because the consultants and cost consultants handle a lot of the like early engagement and um, construction sort of construction feedback during the design process. So it's sort of interesting. I don't know if it brings the GCs in earlier. Having it be a point of fact, like, would be good. It seems like there should be some sort of open source repository where it's like, okay, what's in this drawing set? Like, I got it from a plan room. What have other people found in it? It seems like this doesn't need to be carefully guarded secret knowledge anymore. But
Yeah,
Luigi,
I agree. But yeah, go ahead.
I was going to change topic. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, like, I think there is a process, like there is it's value add when a general contractor goes through a set of documents and decides how to scope a project, because I think it does raise a lot of questions that could lead to VEs or to design changes or like
Yeah,
variation notices that they think will benefit the project. So just to say, hey, we could just solve this whole process and just give you the answer. I think there's a lot of value when the GC goes through that process now and scopes the job himself. That's why I also am very bearish on like one click scoping.
yeah, I would agree on that. I mean, I feel like many of our most pre-con forward, not many, but several of our most pre-con forward partners, so like who emphasize early engagement, who are doing complex work, where they're hand in hand with a design team. They talk about how at its root, the highest value add that Precon offers is getting the field team, the operations team, spun up and engaged earlier on the project. That they provide a mechanism for, experienced superintendents and project managers who are going to run the job to like engage early and start to understand it earlier and start to provide their own feedback earlier. And that it's all about bringing site knowledge early. And I feel like that's one of the things that would fall out of a scope analysis is like, hey, this is how our team builds, or if it's like the actual team providing a little bit of input, like this is how this is going to get built. And that can bring immense value to the owner and to the design team.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey,
Okay, let's continue going through this.
can you scroll
Yeah,
up,
go ahead.
guys? So this the
Yeah,
like little note there, the read this first thing. Uh, is this true? Like this thing where it says that the asymmetry drives nearly all the quantification gap below it. Like it looks like somehow some PDFs didn't
let's
make it into
see.
the analysis. Like what happened with this?
Drawing PDFs were absent for the folder and the flag rather than guessing. Is low quantification gap below barely affects scope identification. Let me check the folder and let's see. Copy, remote, IFC, architectural. So the documents that I gave Claude were the same documents that we gave to the third party for estimating. So it may be true that it thinks that that's the case, but we
Mhm.
still got quantities from the other documents that we used.
Okay. So this is it is incorrectly identifying the cause of the quantification difference.
Yeah, this is the same set. So when we build our benchmarks, we take one set, we give it to human estimators, either in-house or outhouse, additional resources. And then we'll do the same thing with, so like our model, and then we'll do the same thing with like Claude LMs just to build our benchmark. So it's
I gotta
saying that
say though, we gotta mark the day on the calendar. Today's the day that an AI, blamed a poor document set for like not being able to quantify a project.
yeah, that is true. Okay, let's continue here. So let's go through some of these items here. Okay, so F1 by trade. So concrete. So like this is one of the items here that I think is interesting. The F1 is for concrete is 0, but you can do this takeoff from an architectural set, and the architectural set is provided. It's a fairly large set of documents, like 250 pages here. So, like the thing, I had prompted it afterwards to ask it why it got these things wrong, and obviously, like it's what you would understand. It's, hey, I'm reading the quantities from tables. I don't have calibrated area takeoff tools. I can't do lines or linear lengths, and I certainly can't do volumes, which is what concrete is. So it's really guessing at these, but at the same time, it also got some of them right. I got them right, obviously, because if you go to overhead and special doors, like it's a table, and I can sum those tables. It's not going to give me perfect doors, so I'm surprised that it got me an F1 of 1, which
Hey
is
Luigi,
not easy.
for folks who are listening who aren't familiar with F1, is this McLaren versus Ferrari or is F1 something else?
Think of it as accuracy. Consider it as like a 100% accurate. Consider it would be like an F1 of 1, and then an F1 of 50. It's like it's a coin toss. But you use F1 when you have an unbalanced data set. And so, think of it this way: if I were analyzing a contract and there's one liquidated damage clause, but 99 non-liquidated damages clause, you could ask me, "What's your accuracy?" And I'd say, "Well, I found all the non-liquidated damages clause except for that one, so I have a 99% accuracy." When really, you failed. You missed the thing that you were supposed to find, which was the LD clause. So when you have those unbalanced data, same thing like in an MRI. Like, are we finding like a cancer nodule or not? Even though 99% of the images are not cancer nodules. So you're using F1 when you have an unbalanced data set, and you normalize by the expected amount of false positives, or sorry, true positives. So it just helps you understand what the accuracy is without skewing that would be favorable towards somebody who has a bias. It tries to give you like, hey, 0% F1 means like we basically found nothing. Get like relative to that example that I gave you on liquidated damages. I mean, like
So,
the point. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I'm gonna push back. Like concrete, you're not. There's not a defined quantity of concrete that's needed on a job. Like you're delivering trucks that are coming to fulfill the project need. And you're within a range. Like you're within a range. You're not like, oh, I have 10,000, cubic feet of concrete for this project, and it needs to be 10,000 or nothing. Like there's slop, there's things that fall off the truck. I don't think being 100% on concrete even matters. Like the concrete bidder is probably going to know based on the size of the project how much concrete they need just by this linear square foot. They don't need to do a full concrete takeoff. Because my bet would be that the architect did not even put all the details to include the things that need concrete, like a curb for an air conditioning unit on the roof. So I
But
think like,
for the big pour, like you're gonna get
but that's like linear. That's square feet on a project. You're like, hey, the project's 100 feet by 100 feet, and it's 100 stories. You're not going down to like the minuscule square foot where you need 100% takeoff of concrete ever.
that's true, but that is like the first quantity that our customers bring up when you talk about BIM based takeoff. And so I think that that's I think that cubic yards of concrete is a key number. It is
Right?
cubic yards,
I
but
just
yeah,
don't think I
you
would
don't
push
buy it
back
that
that.
way. You buy a certain number of trucks and you keep them coming until the thing is full.
And I
Like,
guarantee if you pulled 10 general contractors, they're not like relying on an accuracy count of quantity from their concrete sub within like 5% to say, oh, that's the exact amount of concrete that I'm.
I think they are.
I
I mean,
think
like,
they are, and they're often self-performing concrete, at least are. Go ahead, Luigi.
I was only gonna agree with you. I mean, they do this exercise now because they wanna see if their subs are in the ballpark or if they're missing something. So I think GCs have a lower level of resolution that they're targeting with
But that,
with quantities.
but that's
But
the point. I would say like that like I would bet, I would assume that saying, hey, if you asked Claude, give me the estimated cubic yards of concrete needed for this project, it will be within 10%. And that's all that matters. It doesn't need to be within 99% for concrete.
yeah, I would
What?
agree. I don't think for the
So
GC
then,
it needs to be within 99%. I agree.
so then it doesn't matter. Like, why even like spin up? Why even have a specific takeoff tool that does concrete to that 99% when the 99% doesn't matter?
I don't think you need a specific tool for quantities. But I do think the biggest drawback that you have right now, the reason why you don't see people doing it, at least at large firms, is there's almost no auditability. There's no way of knowing whether it's right. Versus like if the human goes to draw all the polygons, they can refer back to those polygons. And Claude just doesn't have the tool used to draw those polygons yet. Like maybe that'll change. So I think the point here is like it actually does a decent job. Like it obviously does a good job in scoping, and I mean, what were your results, Mike, for quantities
So for quantities, it's like again, it's within plus or minus 5%
across every trade?
across the trades that I think you need to do quantity takeoffs on.
Like,
Doors, windows, mechanical equipment, electrical equipment, things like carpet, things like concrete don't matter. Things like the amount of paint that goes on a wall, like that that painting sub is like they're not saying, oh, we're going to buy exactly 10 100-gallon tubs of paint. They're buying whatever because there's going to need to be touch ups and like when the guy scrapes the wall like out of the same paint. Like I just like don't like so there's this like bifurcation of trades that matter and things that you have to like order and you can't get from Home Depot or your local distributor need to have accurate counts. So doors, frames, and hardware need to have accurate counts because you can't just go get the 36-inch wide door down at Home Depot the day of the project. Things like an air handling unit need to have accurate counts because you can't get it because there's a lead time on it. But these things that like are commoditized doesn't matter.
Is that because you bid it out to the trades and the trades are gonna do a detailed
Trades own
takeoff?
it. The trades own it. I'm like I just like I think you get in the ballpark with Claude. You can level out the quotes and you compare your subcontractor. You get 3 concrete quotes from your 3 concrete subcontractors if you're self-performing, and you're in the ballpark.
how can you bid level without knowing what the subcontractor amount should be?
Contractors
But
do it all the time.
you have
But then they
4
make
you have 3
mistakes.
bids and your own number. The assumption, like, your number is missing things too.
Yeah.
Like, look at this, like,
Forget the curve. Forgot the curve.
apparently you missed an elevator. Like, right, that happened that just I mean, that's what we hear is, like, when you're leveling, it's like, yeah, we got 4 data points, and I don't know that I probably trust any one trade number more than I trust my own number.
Well,
I
right.
just I just don't think you can trust like, I think the whole point is that you can't trust the drawings enough. You can't trust the documents enough to make 100% assessment on a takeoff,
But I
ever.
think that's your only recourse, right? Because once you enter into the contract, I'm building per the drawings. Like
You have
it's an
intent,
exhibit
though,
in your
but it's
contract.
you
And
still
if
have
it
intent as a
deviates from that,
contractor,
like I'm going to go after a variation notice.
but you still own intent as a contractor. For a concrete pour, you own intent. You own that you're probably gonna do engineering slabs, like, you're gonna own the engineer system around that. It's the same with structural steel. You own the structural steel. The majority of the time, the structural steel provider is owning the shop drawings. They're owning like the thickness, like the anchors, the welding. Like they're owning all those pieces. So I don't think the structural engineer is going to sign off right after a submittal, after shop drawings are submitted through the process. But that document that comes out
Mhm.
that you're doing a takeoff on, like there's so many missing pieces.
But not in a in a design build, yes. But if I'm supposed to just be building per the drawings, the owner and the designer own the quality of those documents.
Not all the time. So when I was at the first job I was in the Eagle Stadium, Philadelphia, and the architect wanted to hang wings that moved in the concourse. That
Okay.
was the contractually on the drawings. There was these artificial wings that were in the concourse that would move with the wind. That was bid out to the structural steel subcontractor, W&W Steel.
Yeah.
They could not produce those wings because it was engineeringly impossible to be able to withstand the engineering requirements of being outside plus moving in the like that there's nothing on the drawings that's going to tell you differently of that working.
It
And
was
the
on the
structural
it was on
steel
the
guy,
drawings, though. It was on the
it was
drawings.
it was on the drawings, but it was incorrect on the drawings. It was technologically impossible to make the way that the drawings were laid out.
But
So
that's different than saying, "Okay, the intent was I had 3 elevators. You ought to have known that, GC," versus like, "Hey, I only see 1 elevator bank here." That's different.
I mean that's just like the whoever laid out the elevator laid out the elevators wrong. Like I'm just saying, I think that there's so much fuzziness in this world, unless it's things that you need to that you have to like, I need a widget. I need something that pushes air. I need a fan in the ceiling. That's a quantity takeoff that can be done. And Claude does a very, very good job of saying there's a fan in the ceiling here on the drawing. As
Yes,
soon as
I
you
agree
get
with
to
you.
conduit, wiring, like that's never going to be accurate. You're never going to accurately get something off of a 2D document that's built in the 3D world ever. Never.
How so how so take the GC. Let's accept for a second. I'm trying to understand this. Like, accept that the GC says, okay, hey, quantities are never going to be more than plus minus 5%. Whatever. Can't trust the quantities. If I'm a trade, like, I have to bid the project. I have more exposure to self perform groups inside of GCs than I do to like strict trade contractors. But I know that they are obsessed with a level of precision that is much higher than GCs have, both for quantities that you would order, but also for quantities that you produce, right? Like they're tracking labor rates. They like close the loop between their production labor rates and their estimating labor rates. If you're installing if a crew can install a certain number of units of something per day, like you're doing your resource planning based on how long they're going to be on site. Like, and there's a lot of fuzziness there, but like at some point you do have to be on site or not. Are you planning for 10 weeks? Or are you planning for 12 weeks? Because like the job will work at 10, but it won't work at 12. Like what's like trade margins are higher than GCs and it varies, but like generally substantially higher, but they're not like that much higher. You
I
have
think
to
they're gonna wanna be as correct as possible. But, I mean, if the question is, can Claude do quantities? The answer is yes, it can. You'd have to have confidence that it's gonna be like, I think for your quantity type, it's probably more doable. Depending on the quantity type, it's more doable or less doable. Like, maybe not for concrete volumes, but definitely for doors. Great, you can use Claude. In which case, like, there's no real debate, like, it can do it. But there's a different question is whether or not it works within your organization.
Yeah, and just like and going back to the subcontractor position, like I mean, this is going back to like that Claude article of like, hey, in commercial construction, there's like 20% upside for AI and LLMs because that's like the manual process of things that they're doing on a computer. But to go back to Andrew's point of like, hey, I'm running conduit, I can run 100 linear feet of conduit a day per team. That has nothing to do with anything in LLM world. How do you do 200 linear feet? Oh, I have to have 2 teams. Like, there's not a robot that's like laying conduit. It's union labor or prevailing wage labor. Like that's a mechanism that nothing around AI is going to touch for the foreseeable future because LLMs aren't going to solve physical world problems like some of the physical world models that are coming out. So I think like that point of like, hey, the 20% of my work as a subcontractor that needs to be done, can I live with that being plus or minus 10% accurate on quantities, on the whatever you want to do? I think the answer is yes. If that helps you get a response faster, it's helpful. Or if it helps you like find the gaps, like it has like an estimating assistant that's sitting there like, hey, I'm going to go through all the documents as this estimator because I own the documents as a mechanical estimator. All right, I'm going to have a bot or an agent go through and like also do the same kind of process that I'm doing. Me as a mechanical estimator that's been in the space for 20 years knows that this mechanical engineer never puts fire stopping on the drawings through the slab penetrations. All right, so every time I have a slab penetration, there's plumbing, there's mechanical, there's conduit that's running through the floor. I need to add $1.50 per penetration. Oh, wait, but the drawings show just a line of this conduit that's running through for the electrical or for the mechanical piping, the sprinkler lines. I know there needs to be three. Why is there three? Well, I knew like, here's the reason why there needs to be three because of this code piece. And I think like until those pieces, until that mechanical subcontractor is like embedded with that mechanical engineer and both incentives are aligned to make that document as accurate as possible, there's no reason to solve for the document issues at scale because they're never going to be solved. There's no incentive for a mechanical engineer to put fire stopping on every penetration through the slab.
Why would I mean, it's useful. It sounds like it can be straightforwardly inferred.
Yeah, like the mechanical subcontractor is inferring that they need to have that there. But if you're reading the documentation is not 100% accurate about that. Or the spec says that you need fire stopping through the penetration, but the
Okay, so
drawings are never going to show that. And then the engineer has no incentive at all because they're billing by the hour. They're already squeezed by margin to make sure that's accurate.
okay, so you're saying a literalist interpretation of drawings, like, will
Correct.
not that
Doesn't
there's
matter.
miles to go before that. You can literally count the stuff on the drawing.
Doesn't matter.
That's that. I feel like that's different from saying you can take a drawing set and use it, given just a drawing set, come up with accurate quantities for what's necessary by applying knowledge
For
and
the thing
understanding.
for the things that are accurately that need to be quantified, like fans or windows, where there's an actual like someone's actually doing this for like for windows, you're doing lighting, whatever. Like that is yes, that's solved. For the things that don't matter, because you don't need to have 10 windows on the wall or 3 light fixtures in the ceiling here. So like paint, drywall, concrete, that doesn't matter. So it's not there's no reason to be 100% accurate on those pieces. So you're bifurcating the processes and you're like verticalizing the supply chain where things can be verticalized. And the things that can be verticalized are things that are engineered, things that you need to like have a system design around, things that need to be like produced in Mexico and shipped to the United States because you got to supply chain manage that. You got to make sure that that light fixture is there. But if it's drywall or paint or concrete, like being within 10% doesn't matter. Like it's not going to make or break the project.
To who? Doesn't
To
matter to
anybody.
who.
To anybody.
Not to the sub that's doing the
Like
partition.
the painting subcontractor is not making or breaking the project because they had to buy 10% extra paint.
It's not like they have like
Might
25%
they be if
margin.
they have to install 10% more paint? Like, what's a typical painting? I mean, I guess you can recoup it through through a change order to a certain extent. Like, hey, we
It definitely it
It's like
definitely does
brutal is
matter.
that painting subcontractor though is just betting on the fact that they can paint faster and better than their competitor. And it's the manpower piece. It's not the takeoff piece.
Well, I mean, like, they do end up multiplying the square footage by a labor productivity rate. I just to think that to say it doesn't matter is like what I disagree with because they spend a lot of time making sure it's as accurate as possible. And like if it didn't matter, why not just take the area kind of like gross square feet and apply a number and just be like, we'll see what it is. It doesn't really matter. Whereas reality, like they spend a lot of time going through to make sure it's as accurate as possible. So if it doesn't matter, why did they do that?
I don't think painting subcontractors do.
Say it again.
I don't think painting subcontractors do.
Drywall, and concrete definitely do.
I just think there's so many dependencies on a project of like that you're like already putting 10% extra drywall on a project because the laborer comes sweeps by and scratches half of it. And that's not a change order. That's just kind of fixed on a punch list. I feel like it's like you're working toward it's not like self-driving where you need to be 99.99% accurate to save somebody's life. So if you can get to 90% accurate, all my position is if you can get to 90% accuracy by launching it through Fable, that is good enough for the market. because you don't need to be 99.99%. And those additional nines that you're trying to drive for are just increasing the cost to unnecessarily provide the ROI that's needed.
It's
Like if you're a
interesting,
painting
right?
subcontractor paying $100,000 a year on a takeoff tool doesn't make sense.
If you spend 10 last point on that, if you spend 10 grand if you spend 10 grand for a takeoff tool, okay, and it saves you from having to overspend relative to your budget on projects. Let's say your average contract value is $1 million. That means you're spending an extra $100,000 on material. It more than pays for itself on one.
I would say the controlling of your items on a project and your process for QA/QC is more of a variable than the takeoff that you've done at the estimating portion.
Like if the in-field QA for some
Help me
trade, sure.
help me understand that. So you're saying what actually happens on site is a variable that I can't control, and so it doesn't matter whether I hit. But the thing is,
No,
like, it could hit me
it
twice.
the QA/QC is what you can control on a job site by how you manage your team. We're gonna stick with a painting concrete contractor as an example. How are you managing that process on a job site, which is the majority of where they're gonna lose money, as opposed to saying like, "Hey, I bought 100 gallons of paint as opposed to 110 gallons of paint." So that quality, the QA/QC process is more important to that subcontractor than the initial estimate takeoff.
But then I get hit both ways. I'm both short on quantities and I'm low on then I'm also hit on QA/QC versus, like, I could only be low on QA/QC unless I'm missing some.
I just think so again, like, hey, we're doing the estimate, we're doing a takeoff. I'm 90% accurate on my takeoff for paint by using whatever. That's a checkbox. Being 99% accurate on the takeoff at that point is not balancing the profitability of you once you do the installation as a contractor.
So what do you think is if so let's say that we're true. What do you think is stopping subs from just doing their quantities in Claude right now?
I think it's education. I think some are. Some contractors. I think it's just like why like they're like there's a fear of like, hey, what actually happens when I upload my documents to Claude? Like, who owns the data? Getting approval on a $20 Claude subscription is actually a hard thing for subcontractors right now, unless you have someone in IT that's like educated in that model. Like, we've talked to contractors that still have on-premise email servers. Like, and the idea of like buying an AI that they don't really understand is a huge hurdle. So
No,
that's
it'll
my entire pitch is that you should always like you should try it in Claude. Whatever you're trying to do, set up a skill, try it in Claude. If you get 90% of the accuracy that you need, I think that's good enough for a contractor.
It's this like 90% number. Like I'm very sympathetic to the argument that you don't need perfect accuracy, especially in QTO. That makes a ton of sense to me. But the 90% feels low, man. Like if the error bar is greater than your median like gross margin on a project, like something about that
Well,
gives me the
you're not
heebie.
just launching it. You're not just launching it. You're not saying, hey, send it to Claude and then just send the quote back to the general contractor. You're still having human in a loop, so you're supplementing it. How accurate is your estimator? Is your estimator over 90% accurate right now?
I would say most
Right?
estimators at subs are probably at
Yeah.
around, like, 98% accuracy. That's, like,
They
my
only
vibe.
do one scope. They do it day in, day out. They've got tight connections to people performing it.
90% accuracy on a document set, that's not accurate though.
But
Yeah,
it
because
doesn't like, the accuracy component you can
they
carve
got all
out.
the rules of inference that like you described earlier. Like they live that all day. I mean, it's interesting to like. You guys remember when uh Zillow did auto buying of homes? Right? They built a model that could automatically price a home. Any given thing. It
They lost so
like
much money.
they lost a ton of money. And the estimates were probably actually pretty good. The trick was they set themselves up for like rampant adverse selection, where everyone who was in the house knew more about the house than Zillow ever could. And so if they thought they could do better than Zillow, they didn't sell on Zillow. And if they thought Zillow was better than they were going to get in the market because there was a disgusting black mold infestation that was going to come out immediately when someone walked in the door, like they sold to Zillow and Zillow got fucked. Right. And so you like you get if you drive 90% accuracy and you're 10% high, you don't win those jobs. They don't contribute to your margin. You only win the ones where you come in low. There's this selection that means that the error is accentuated in the projects that actually win in a way that is not to your benefit. And that makes me wonder if that 90% is like And then it feels low.
But you're not just like, right, like, so, hey, all right, I'm going back to the painting example. I'm getting a budget number to my general contractor using Claude. Hey, I'm gonna launch this document, send it to Claude, ask it to do a painting takeoff. All right, here you go. Here's my 90% budget number. You as an estimator are still going through the process to like validate those pieces. Claude does a great job of giving you the steps, giving you the data, giving you like you can set up a skill to do this, and you can find like you're exploring the gaps. Like you're looking at you're having this like again, it's like this assistant that's helping you for $20 a month.
Yeah.
And like that, like it's never going to be. There's no reason to be 100% because you're never going to like. There's no reason to be 100% because the documents that are never 100% accurate.
But that argument though doesn't hold, in my opinion, doesn't hold water because if this is a lump sum contract and the owner has responsibility for design errors, I'm accepting those documents as is. If there's an error with the documents, I have recourse. I could sue you. If you're not going to give me substantial performance because you, I have to put in this elevator bank that was never accounted for, that's a problem. So yes, the drawings are never completely accurate, but it's still like that's my contractual basis. If this were to go to court, they'd say, okay, it's Exhibit A in the contract. There's clearly 200,000 square feet. The owner's asking for another 40,000 square feet. That's never shown on the drawings. Like I actually have legal standing to sue you for it. So I think that's what they end up relying on. But if we were going to say Claude is going to be an additional component, like a check, okay, well then what we're not saying is it's going to replace estimators or it's going to replace estimating tools because estimators still need to go perform that takeoff themselves.
100%. You own intent. You're never going to offload that unless the software provider is absorbing all liabilities. You can't be a subcontractor and say I'm just going to like rely on the quantities of the software, which means you're going to have to human verify everything that you're doing on a takeoff. You're going to have trust but verify the application. So that delta of 90% accuracy to 99% accuracy doesn't actually matter. And there's the psychological trick. Like when you go to an Apple store, for example, they have their computers at whatever degree so that you go grab the computer and bring it up because you feel ownership. Is it actually better for a user to have a 90% accurate tool because then you're feeling ownership of the documentation by going through and validating all the different nodes that were inaccurate than being 99% accurate because that 1% is going to screw you over because you're not trusting and verifying the process or the process.
But then what we're describing is a tool that's not as good as their current practice. Versus like,
Is
okay, let's take like a company that I think is really good. So like Bob Yard, for example. They started with like a single trade landscaping. When they do takeoffs, they don't just do like counts, linear feet, area. They break it down into different types. So there's symbols, there's hatched areas, there's like irregular polygons, etc. Right, and so like they'll put that on the screen for you, and you can just click. So people are using it because it's very fast, but because it maps to their current process. And at the end of the day, the estimator is still responsible. If you look at what Claude can do relative to that, I would say it fails in situ because it doesn't meet them where they are. But it's a good check. So, but like, okay, so then if the question is like, can Claude do quantities? The answer is yes. Can it do quantities the way subs currently do them? I would say no. It doesn't. It doesn't pass that test. So like I'm still long quantity software because you still need a human to verify. But unless Claude can just spin that up and like make a model on the fly that allows you to verify these accuracies, no, sorry, verify the accuracy, like I don't think that's going to change.
Gents, I want to take a sideways for 1 minute. You guys talked about how education was a big barrier to trying this out. Can we get a tour? Do you guys want to do a tour of the setups that like each of you used to drive quantities and scopes from Fable? What does it look like? What's the skill word? What's the
Yeah,
yeah.
Mike, why don't you go? I can show mine right after.
So anytime you do anything in Claude that you're doing a repetitive task. So there's two different systems in Claude that are powerful. One is a project. A project has an end date, so it closes out. So it's something that's like short term. The other tool is what's called a skill creator. And anytime you do anything in Claude that you're trying to do a repetitive task, for example, like a quantity takeoff, you want to ask the skill creator. So if you use backslash skill creator to build a skill, like say build a skill to do a quantity take off of a mechanical set of drawings. So this is going to take time to do. but I'm running this in Fable Max, and then you can call that skill to do a task. So if I go over to this tab, it's actually processing this document. It's going through and checking all the different drawings.
I don't see a new tab.
Oh, that probably doesn't help. So this is an example of what, oops, I can zoom in, of what Claude is doing in the background. So this is a quantity takeoff. It's going in and actually boxing out all the mechanical equipment. It's putting bounding boxes, actually highlighting the different sections of the drawing. Uh, so now this skill is repeatable and reusable on any of the documents that I want to upload in the application. And you can tweak and process that skill. So to go back to this position of like, hey, it's not in my workflow. Well, every estimator is doing a little bit different. You as an estimator can build a skill that follows your process exactly, and then it's repeated over and over again in the application to catch all these different things. And you can just continuously upload document sets to do that. So this is how Fable does it. Again, like this is the idea that it gets you 90 to 95% of the way there. It can create different reports, different Excel exports, different things that help you drive like, hey, this is what's valuable to me as a user. To get you to that point where now like I go look at the challenge areas, I go look at the penetrations through the slab or whatever those things are that you're historically, there's scope gaps around. So again, this is out of the box Claude. So building that skill, building out that process, updating the skill, and continuing to evolve it around how you want to use the application. Does a really, really good job for $20 a month, and it ties directly to the way that you do it as an estimator, and not kind of pigeonholing you into the process of how a software wants you to do it.
So does Claude actually draw the bounding boxes around
Yeah.
the penalties?
Yep.
What does it look like?
So these were oh, I lost you guys. So this example, it actually put bounding boxes around the different pieces of equipment here. These dash lines. I know it's a lot. I don't know why it's so blurry, but yeah. Oh, the bounding boxes. The bounding boxes are getting better and better. I think Gemini does a better job with bounding boxes, but that's just because it has a better visual model. But yeah, they'll do bounding boxes around specific sections. You run into things with like context windows. So it's like, hey, let me just upload the plan set for the mechanical, the 7 drawings you have, and it's going to get you 90% of the way there
Okay,
out of the
so
box.
let's go round table with our conclusions then. So 3 questions. 1, can Claude do quantities? 2, should subs use Claude to do quantities? And what would be an interesting third question? Will they be using Claude for quantities? So those are the 3 questions. Can I do quantities? 2, should subs use it? 3, will they? Mike, what are your answers to all 3?
Yes, yes, and maybe.
Okay, Andrew.
So as a software, again, the whole point I'll say, as a software provider, I think it's very important to educate your customers on how these systems work, because that's the value prop. Like you want to be consulted to them, and then teach them how to use these models, and that's the value prop you can provide as a software provider, because they're not going to have enough time to know, hey, do I use Fable? Do I use Opus? Or do I use
Yeah,
Gemini
I
3.5?
agree with that. I agree with Okay, Andrew.
Yeah, I'll go yes, yes, no.
Yes, yes, no. Okay, and I'll say yes, no, but I mean, it's undeniable that they can do quantities. I think anyone who says at this point that they don't is like either they don't know or they don't want to know, but it like they can. What I just don't understand about the harness though is like how is it making an inference on area if if it doesn't have measurement tools? Is it just
Why
taking
wouldn't you give it measuring tools?
Is use the tools.
well the harnesses don't come equipped with like a scale measurement tool or like a polygon trace.
Yeah, but you got code for there's Python libraries for that and Python libraries for opening PDFs. Have
And
either of you guys tried out Bluebeam's MCP
Yeah,
server?
Bluebeam. I was gonna say Bluebeam's
Have you used it? It's hilarious.
hilarious how
It's a local MCP server, and when Claude is doing something, the UI has to be open and goes unresponsive and says performing MCP operation. And I think it's funny.
but I
So
don't think that's not what Claude's doing when it's generating an area. I don't think it's calling the Bluebeam MCP. It's probably
Maybe it
using
should.
like a Python library, sure, but like
Yeah.
those are not. It's not accurate, right? It's like what is it doing? Like OpenCV, and then it's just and then what? Counting the pixels? Like maybe.
I mean, not bad. not a bad start. Wait, but like guys, like you gotta like how do you not know this? Like how are we putting forward quantities and we don't understand the like chain of technology that connected the drawing to the number? Like there's a little bit of like, wait, what? Like,
Well, I don't know. I don't know what it's specifically doing. It just comes up with the number. Like with the quantities, it makes sense. Like it could take an image and like the image models are good enough to say, yes, there is one AHU here. And like AHUs are I'd say they're easy because they all have text tags and you can just OCR it. But if I have a floor plate, again, I don't think it's drawing the polygon. Well, how does it know?
yeah, I don't think anybody should use that then.
Andrew's changed. He's
Yeah,
a no no no.
I've changed my mind. Like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna have this like unknowable black box. It's like it could be
Well, yeah,
magic.
that's what it's like.
But
It's not
never should be an unknowable black box.
I'm sorry, what?
it is a black box. Like it's good as a check. I will agree. Like it'll say, "Hey, like I think you've missed this elevator." That's fantastic. That's really useful. All right,
Yeah.
we'll cut it there.
All
But
right.
you heard it here first. Yes, Claude can do quantities. All right, thanks everyone. I'll stop the stream.
Spend $50 on Fable tokens and